Okay guys, so yesterday we ended up making a decorated picture frame much like this. Just to quickly review, oh, that's another one I made for my other class. Just to quickly review, we covered the various different tools on the side here, shape tools, all the ones in blue. So remember we have our standard square, circle, rounded square, and also if we held down on that fourth button, we get a variety of other different specialized shapes, things like word balloons, things like clouds, things like stars. Remember that when you make those tools, they have a bunch of different options as well. Up here, you can change the points and other things amongst the other shapes. You can also pull the orange tabs, this orange tab, to change a variety of options on each of the shapes. Yep. Remember that we also talked about fills, which is the inside of a shape, and strokes, which are the outlines of a shape. Now you can change strokes using the stroke options over here. You can make them thicker or thinner as you want. And if you go over here to brushes, you can even change the way that they look. So if you want, for instance, a watercolor kind of look, you've got your brushes there. Last but not least, we also covered how you can pull a shape into another. So for instance, if I made this square, let me remove that stroke real quick. Made that square, gave it a different color. You can pull it inside another shape, and it shows only within that shape. I don't know why you're surprised. We did this yesterday.
Oh. I came in late.
So those are the basics of shapes. However, shapes don't always do what we want them to do. They're not always exactly what we want. There's tons of options in here, but sometimes we want things that aren't these standard shapes. And that's where we get into drawing tools. So, our drawing tools are up here. We've got the pen tool, the pencil tool, and the brush tool. So, I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way up. Your first one's, of course, your brush tool. And that, of course, does what it sounds like. It makes a brush. It draws a brush. Unlike Affinity Photo, we don't have the usual options up here. Well, we do have, sorry, let me rephrase that. Like Affinity Photo, we have a lot of the options up here. So for instance, if I wanted to make a larger paint tool, I would just increase the size there. You'll notice as you guys paint, it reacts a little differently from Affinity Photo in the fact that it actually moves things a little bit as you paint. This draws a lot in a way that's a lot more complex than Affinity Photo. And you'll notice that it comes out with much, much more interesting designs because of it. When you're in the brush tool, changing color is very similar to how you change color in other parts of the program. Just change your color over here, and then your brush reacts like normal. And it's still moving. You'll notice one of the things that makes it much, much nicer than Affinity Photo is that you can still adapt and warp that line. So for instance, a tool we haven't used yet, we all know the move tool. We can still, of course, move what it needs, and we can also shrink it down if we need to shrink it down, or grow it if we need to grow it. One new tool that we haven't used before is the node tool. So if I use the white tool over here, when I click on something like a line, you'll notice I can see all these little points. When I'm using the white tool rather than the black tool, the node tool rather than the move tool, I can still manipulate this line, which is not something you can do in Affinity Photo. So if you mess up slightly on something, you have the ability to still change and adapt it. So notice, if I use a point, it pulls that point, but I can also pull a line. Pulling a line curves it between the two endpoints. Endpoints are determined by the white dots. Moving the dots, of course, moves the endpoints to the line, allowing you to shape things in pretty exact ways. So it's really nice for drawing. Why? Because if you draw something imprecisely, you can just go back and correct those curves, correct those lines, correct those points, so that they look more like you want them to. I'm going to pause the lesson right now and give you guys a chance to play around with the brush tool and do some basic brush work. So our next part of class is we're going to be outlining things with the pen tool. So remember, the pen tool again is a tool that you can click and click again to get a line. If you hold down on that second click, you can then curve that line as you will. So we're going to use that now to outline a character. So first things first, I'm going to grab character. Let's grab, trying to think which one I want to grab. Let's do this one.
The girl one.
So one thing you're going to want to look out for, you're going to want to look out for a picture that is a complete shape in itself. What you don't want to do is have a hole in the middle of your picture. So for instance, I'm trying to find a good picture. So for instance, if we're talking about, what's the girl's name? Not Lilo, her sister. Her sister's not Stitch.
Potato.
Kaylani?
No.
Kayla? Anyway, so whatever her name is, this would not be a great shape to do. Why? Because she's got a hole right here. It's really hard to make a hole in the middle of a shape that doesn't already have a hole. So notice her arm here forms kind of a donut. We don't want donuts. Nani, there we go. So we don't want a donut. So make sure that you don't have a hole in the middle of your character. So watch out if they have their hands on their hips, they have their hands like this. You want to make sure that their hands are out and not touching their body so that you can outline it properly. Second thing, you're going to want to look out for a shape that looks great as an outline. For instance, Baymax here probably wouldn't look good as an outline. Why? Because if we outlined him, he'd just be a big series of bumps. Not very interesting to look at. A bunch of circles. You want something that will be recognizable as an outline. So for instance, that probably wouldn't work. For instance, that would be probably hard. Sorry, I'm trying to find a good one. Something like this, where you can clearly see the outline all around, and it would look like a character, would probably be a really good thing to do. You want to avoid a character that's going to look like a series of lumps. Again, Baymax, bad outline. Because again, he'd just be a bunch of curves. It wouldn't be very recognizable as a shadow. So I'm going to take my saved picture. I'm just going to, wait, did I save it here? Did I save a picture? Where did I save it to? Which one was it? Okay, I'm just going to save this one. Save link as. Wait. Cancel. I want to save image as. There we go. Oh, it's right here. Okay, so I'm going to take it. I'm just going to drag it into my Affinity Designer. Notice it drags straight in. And from here, I can start outlining him. I'm going to ignore the butterfly for now. I might go back in later and do it. So I'm going to click and click to form my line. I probably want to take my line down just a little bit, so it's a little bit smaller. And I might adjust that just a little bit. So notice you can readjust things. So from here, I'm going to complete my curve over to the side here.
I think I was using that yesterday. By accident.
And you'll notice if something's reacting unusually, so notice how I can't curve the line like I want it to. Undo. And I believe, is it control click? Nope. Alt click on it, and that resets the curve. So notice before, my curve wouldn't react properly. If that happens, if you can't curve your line correctly, undo it and then alt click to reset the curve and draw the line that you want. So this will probably happen again here. Notice it's going the opposite direction. I'm going to undo. I'm going to alt click and then I'm going to curve. So I would then go from here. I probably have to alt-click again because I have to go up, down, alt-click, up,
So this is how
down.
they do it for cartoons.
For cartoons, they do something a little bit more complicated because they have to do things that are moving parts. So they do something that's similar but much more complicated than what we do because we're not quite to professional level, but we're getting there. So again, I'm holding Alt-click to make sure my lines curve properly. Sometimes they'll curve naturally. If not, again, undo, Alt-click. Click curve. Click over, not curving properly. Alt-click, going around. Questions, comments, confusions on this?
No.
Nope. So my outline's not complete, but you can see I got part of Stitch here. When your outline's complete, you can then put a fill in, and hopefully it won't do what it did, because notice it's filling this area rather than the inside, but it's got his nose right here. If you've done it correctly, then you should see an outline of your character. So once you've got your outline of your character, you can start decorating it like you want. Make yourself a little character poster.
Can we also Google the character again, right?
What's up?
Can we Google the character?
Yes, you should Google the character. Please don't freehand draw this. Awesome. I'm going to stop this. I'm going to